You are standing in water that should not be here. It presses cold and heavy against your thighs, pulling at your legs as if it wants to take you down with it. The ground beneath your boots has softened into something alive, something that shifts and gives way each time you try to move. The wind is screaming now, not the steady breath you were promised, but a violent, tearing force that whips rain into your face and robs you of sight. Somewhere nearby, timber groans under pressure it was never meant to endure. A beam snaps. The sound cracks through the storm like a bone breaking inside a body. You know with sudden and absolute clarity that if you fall here, no one will see you disappear. The water will close over the place you stood, smooth and indifferent, and the land will not remember your weight. You try to breathe slowly, but the air tastes of rot and salt and churned mud. Each breath feels borrowed. You cannot tell whether the pounding in your ears is your heart or the water forcing itself through weakened earth. This is the moment everything balances on, before the land gives up, before the work of weeks collapses into a flooded memory. You are not a hero here. You are a body fighting to remain upright while the countryside decides whether to keep you. And before you go any further, before the water rises any higher, you are being invited into this experience. This is a slow descent into survival history, a simulation meant to carry you through the quiet terror of real lives lived against the elements. If you want to endure more moments like this, if you want to survive history one night at a time, you are welcome to subscribe and settle in. There is no rush. The land is patient. The story will wait. Now the storm loosens its grip. The water recedes from your thoughts, even if not from the fields. Your breathing slows. Time begins to fold backward, carrying you to a place before the panic, before the hunger, before the water first tested the ground beneath your feet. You arrive in the Dutch countryside under a low, colorless sky. The air is cold enough to stiffen your fingers, but damp rather than sharp. It clings to you, seeping through layers of wool and linen until your skin never quite feels dry. The land stretches outward in long, flat lines, broken only by canals that cut through the earth like old scars. Water sits everywhere, still, dark, and watchful. You can smell it before you see it, a heavy mix of algae, wet soil, and something faintly metallic carried on the wind. You are not new to work, but this place makes work feel different. Every step sinks slightly. Every tool feels heavier, as if the ground itself resists being shaped. Your boots collect mud almost immediately, thick layers building with each step until lifting your feet becomes an effort. The cold works its way into your joints, slow and persistent. It is not painful yet, but it promises to be. The wind is constant, not violent, not loud, just always there, brushing against your face, pressing against your back, whispering through reeds and grass. It never fully stops. Even when it softens, it reminds you of its presence with a faint pressure against your ears. You were told this wind is a gift. You were told it will save the land. The windmill does not exist yet, not in any complete form. There are only timbers laid out on damp ground, darkened by moisture before they have ever stood upright. The wood smells fresh where it has been cut, but that scent is already being swallowed by the wet air. Iron fittings sit cold to the touch, leaching warmth from your fingers when you lift them. Everything here feels temporary, even the tools in your hands. You work because stopping would mean thinking too much. You work because standing still makes the cold sink deeper. Your hands learn the grain of the wood, the resistance of damp soil against the shovel, the dull ache that settles into your shoulders and refuses to leave. Hours pass without clear markers. The sky barely changes. Light fades and returns without drama, as if time itself is reluctant to move forward here. There is food, but it is simple and never enough to make you feel full. Bread that tastes faintly sour, cheese that leaves a film of salt on your tongue. You eat slowly, knowing that hunger will return quickly, no matter how carefully you chew. Water is everywhere, but none of it feels truly clean. You drink anyway, because thirst is worse than doubt. At night, you lie on rough bedding in shared shelter, listening to the wind push against the walls. The structure creaks, responding to pressure like a living thing. Sleep comes in pieces. You wake often, unsure what pulled you from rest. The sound of water shifting, the wind changing tone, or simply the awareness that too much depends on wood and earth holding their shape. Even before the disaster, your body senses it. There is a tension that never fully releases. The ground feels too soft underfoot. The canals sit too high, their dark surfaces level with the fields instead of safely below. You notice small things, water pooling where it did not before, soil slumping at the edges of embankments, the way birds lift suddenly and all at once, as if responding to a signal you cannot hear. The cold deepens as days pass. It moves from discomfort to presence, settling into your bones. Your hands crack despite the grease you rub into them. The skin around your nails splits and stings when damp air finds it. Every task takes longer. Fatigue builds quietly, stacking itself on top of you until standing upright feels like an act of will. The windmill frame begins to rise, slowly, piece by heavy piece. You feel small beside it, aware of how much faith is being placed in wood, rope, and human hands. When the wind gusts, the unfinished structure sways just enough to make your stomach tighten. You imagine it falling, crushing everything beneath it, returning the effort to scattered debris. At dusk, the land smells stronger. Wet earth releases something sour and deep, like decay working patiently below the surface. The canals reflect the sky in dull silver, offering no sense of depth. You cannot tell where water ends and land begins unless you step too close. You learn to move carefully, to test each step, to never assume firmness. There is talk of storms, though nothing dramatic yet, just a tightening of routines, a subtle urgency in movements. You feel it in yourself, too. You stack tools more carefully. You check knots twice. You glance at the sky more often than necessary, searching for changes that might come too late.
The nights grow louder. The wind presses harder against the shelter, finding gaps and seams. Rain begins to fall more often, light at first, then steady, soaking everything it touches. Nothing dries properly anymore. Your clothes remain damp. Your bedding smells faintly of mildew. Your breath fogs the air, even indoors. Still, the disaster has not arrived. It waits, patient as the land itself. And you move through these early days unaware of how clearly you will remember them later. The quiet moments, the ordinary fatigue, the sense that something is wrong without knowing when it will finally reveal itself. You do not yet know how high the water can rise. You do not yet know how fragile the ground beneath your feet truly is. You only know that the wind never stops, the earth never fully hardens, and that survival here is already asking more of you than you expected to give. You hear the first warning long before you see it. The wind changes just slightly, subtle, almost polite, but you feel it in the back of your neck and the nape of your skull. It carries the smell of wet earth and iron, the faint tang of something dead, hidden under the water. Your stomach tightens. The villagers have been quiet today, moving with measured steps, speaking in low voices that don't reach you fully. You realize that they know what you do not. You try to ask, but the words die in your throat. You were told once to remember the promise of the windmill, but there is no comfort in repetition. Not yet. You move through the flat fields,
boots sinking deep into mud that has softened since dawn. Every step makes a wet squelching sound that seems louder than it should, echoing against the low sky. You grip a plank to steady yourself and feel the dampness seep through your gloves. Your fingers stiffen instantly, a shock of cold that climbs your arms and makes the muscles ache. The smell of cut wood and rusted iron fills your nostrils. The tools are heavier than you remember, soaked through by last night's drizzle, covered in mud that clings like a living thing. You drag a hammer across the sodden ground and realize it will take hours, maybe days, just to move the pieces into place. You feel your chest tighten, knowing that time is already slipping through your fingers. You are taught the old promise of the windmill as if it were a chant, to turn the wind into protection, to push back water, to guard the land. But hearing it, you realize that faith and mechanics are not the same. You try to picture the finished mill, sails cutting the sky, turning water from danger into safety. The image feels distant, unreal, like a dream glimpsed through fog. You reach out to touch the frame rising from the mud, and the damp wood shivers under your palms. You think you feel it pulse, not alive exactly, but aware of your weight, aware that you are testing it. The villagers move around you, and you study them closely, noting the lines etched into faces from years of exposure, the hands calloused and scarred from labor you barely understand. They work in silence. One older man adjusts a beam with precision, lips pressed into a thin line. Another carries a soaked bundle of rope and mutters a single word under his breath, lost in the wind. You realize that here, speech is almost dangerous. Sound carries, words travel through the air, through the reeds, through the water, to places unseen. You lower your voice instinctively, as if saying too much will draw attention from something waiting.
The smell of the land grows stronger as you near the main foundation. Wet clay, rotting plant matter, iron from old tools, the faint decay of drowned roots. Everything mixes into a thick, choking perfume. You breathe it in and it lodges in your chest. You cough, tasting soil and damp. The mud clings to your boots, heavier now, pulling at your steps as if it knows you will not leave easily. You begin the first tasks, raising beams into place, hammering joints, tightening ropes. Every movement demands effort. The wind presses against your body like a hand, pushing against the sails not yet built. The air is sharp, tasting faintly of salt, even though the sea is miles away. It carries hints of decay, of stagnant water, of things you do not want to imagine. Your muscles scream, protesting the slow, constant strain, but you keep going. The land will not wait for weakness. Hours pass without ceremony. The sun hangs pale and low, the sky smeared with clouds that promise rain. Shadows lengthen, but nothing darkens completely. The fields look eternal, flat and unyielding. You notice every sound, a bird lifting suddenly from the reeds, water trickling under a board, the slight groan of a beam settling into mud. It feels like the earth itself is watching, waiting, and you wonder if it remembers those who failed before you. The older villagers offer guidance without speaking your language fully. Their hands gesture sharply, their eyes narrow. You follow movements, mimic motions, adjust angles. The work is endless. Each piece set in place is temporary. You know it. You can feel it. Even now, before the disaster has begun, the land and water are testing you. Each misstep could be fatal. The windmill demands obedience, not hope. By midday, your stomach tightens with hunger you do not recognize at first. There is bread, small pieces, damp with condensation, tasting faintly of sour milk. You chew slowly, carefully, savoring what little energy it provides, aware that weakness now could become disaster later.
The wind blows harder, teasing at the timber, shifting ropes, lifting dust and droplets that sting your eyes. You feel fatigue pressing into your bones, not enough to collapse, but enough to make each movement deliberate. Each breath is measured, stolen. You glance at the canals again, dark and cold, their surfaces like mirrors reflecting the dull sky. You step closer to the edge, instinctively, testing the ground. It gives slightly underfoot, then holds. You hear the distant croak of frogs or birds, the kind of sound that disappears when the real threat arrives. You know it is coming. The air carries it, a weight in your chest, a taste at the back of your throat. But for now, the disaster is still a shape in your mind, not yet fully formed. The smell of rain begins to mix with the earth and mud, sharp now, metallic. The wind carries it across the fields, pushing at the unfinished frame of the windmill, tugging ropes loose from careless knots. You move to tighten them, aware that each frayed fiber could be a death sentence once the storm arrives. Every sound makes you flinch, the groan of wood, the clatter of a dropped tool, the water slapping against the embankments. It all seems amplified, like warning signals you cannot yet fully interpret. Even as the day grows long, there is a strange rhythm to the labor, hammering, lifting, pulling, adjusting. Mud squishes between your toes, your hands are raw, skin cracked and bleeding slightly at the edges. Sweat mixes with rain and cold, a greasy film coating your face. The effort is quiet, exhausting, necessary. You feel your body becoming part of the land, moving with its demands, not against them.
By evening, the wind grows heavier, sharper. It lifts wet leaves and reeds, slapping them against your legs. The sky darkens, though it is not night yet, and your shadows stretch long across the field, distorted and uneven. You realize that the water will rise. You feel it deep down, a pressure under the soles of your feet that is not mud, but something more patient, more knowing. The land is holding its breath, and you sense that your life now depends on listening to it. You pause for a moment, hands resting on a beam, breathing hard. The wet wood is cold, almost biting, transferring the chill deep into your bones. You notice for the first time the smell of iron more sharply, the faint rot of drowned reeds that have lain too long in water. Your eyes wander across the flat horizon, where canals and fields seem endless, unbroken and indifferent. You realize you are alone in a sense that is heavier than solitude. No one can truly save you. The land will take its due. And yet, you keep working. You cannot stop, not yet, because the promise of the windmill is alive only in the struggle, only in the patient and meticulous effort that defies the water and wind. You hammer another joint, tighten another rope, shift another beam into place. You feel the first whispers of exhaustion threading through your muscles, a prelude to the greater fatigue that will follow. You do not yet know the disaster, but the land and water are already teaching you their language, one of tension, pressure, and relentless patience. By the time darkness truly settles, you are soaked through. Your gloves are caked with mud, your back aches, every breath tastes faintly of iron and earth. You step back, hands on knees, and glance at the skeleton of the windmill. It stands, fragile and incomplete, but defiant. The wind whistles past its timbers, tugging ropes loose, testing each joint. You realize that tomorrow everything will begin again, and you also know, in the marrow of your bones, that the land is waiting, always waiting, for the first mistake. You wake to a sky that is not quite light, the horizon hidden behind layers of mist that cling to the canals like stubborn ghosts. The air is thick with dampness, pressing against your lungs and making each breath a deliberate, measured effort. Your body aches in ways you did not think possible,
the small muscles between your shoulder blades, the joints in your fingers, the arches of your feet. You roll your shoulders slowly, feeling the soreness spread and deepen, and remind yourself that the day will demand more, much more than this. You step outside the shelter and immediately feel the mud gripping your boots. It pulls with every movement, soft but insistent, as if testing your resolve. You shift your weight, lean on the shovel, and glance at the skeleton of the windmill rising from the wet earth. Timber sticks out at odd angles, ropes hang loose, and iron fittings glint faintly under the gray light. The frame sways gently, just enough to make your stomach tighten. You know that each movement is precarious. One misstep, one weak knot, and the structure could collapse. The wind moves constantly, not a breeze that caresses, not a whisper of encouragement. It is patient, persistent, a force that will not relent. You feel it tug at your hair, press against your chest, catch the edges of your coat, and shake it like a warning. You notice the smell it carries, wet soil, algae, rust, the faintly bitter tang of water that has stood too long. It is familiar now, a presence as tangible as your own body, and yet you are aware of the threat it represents, lurking beneath the ordinary rhythm of wind through reeds.
You begin work, slow and deliberate. Each plank must be lifted with care, each beam guided into place with precision. The mud grabs at your boots, the rope bites your hands, and the hammer feels twice as heavy as it did yesterday. Sweat collects on your brow, then chills immediately against your wet skin. Your fingers stiffen, joints cracking with effort, and a dull ache spreads through your lower back. The work is unending. You pause only to wipe your hands against a soaked rag, tasting the iron and grime left behind. The villagers move around you in silence, their presence a constant reminder that you are not alone, but not protected. The older men handle ropes and timbers with a certainty born of decades, their movements precise and economical. You mimic them, copying gestures, testing the limits of your strength. But the windmill resists your intentions. It does not bend to will or hope. It is mud and wood, and it is patient. You feel the constant hum of tension in every nail, every rope, every imperfectly settled beam. By midday, the sky begins to darken slightly, clouds thickening in layers that feel almost physical. The wind picks up, catching the frame and tugging ropes loose despite your careful knots. You tighten them again, knuckles raw, muscles screaming, feeling your body protest every movement. Your stomach churns with hunger that is no longer a background sensation, but a constant gnawing. The bread you brought is damp, its flavor flat, and yet you chew methodically, swallowing slowly to conserve energy. Water dribbles down your neck and into your collar, cold and unwelcome, and you do not wipe it away. There is no time for comfort. The smell of the land intensifies. Mud, wet wood, stagnant water, algae, rot. Every scent layers itself into your awareness, a constant companion. You notice small movements in the canals, a ripple where nothing should be, the faint lift of a leaf riding an invisible current. You step closer, testing the ground, feeling it give just slightly underfoot. There is tension here, beneath your feet, beneath the frame you are raising. It waits. You can feel it. Hours pass, unbroken except by small gestures of survival.
tightening a knot, adjusting a beam, shoving mud aside to steady a post. The wind is relentless, tugging at ropes, pushing against timbers, demanding attention you can barely supply. You hear the creak of wood bending just enough to make your chest tighten. Every sound is magnified in the low, damp air, the squelch of mud beneath boots, the sharp clink of iron against wood, the soft hiss of wind through the reeds. It is as if the land itself is counting your mistakes. You begin to hallucinate small movements at the edge of your vision. A rope seems to twitch without touch. Shadows stretch across the mud in ways the low sun cannot create. You tell yourself it is fatigue, hunger, and damp playing tricks on your mind. Yet the suspicion lingers, prickling along the back of your neck, making every step deliberate. You move slowly, carefully, testing every plank, every rope, every nail, aware that one false move could be the end. By evening, your body is raw and exhausted. Fingers bleed slightly from friction against rope, muscles lock with cold and effort, and your clothes cling uncomfortably, soaked through with mud and rain. The windmill rises, but it is still incomplete. The timbers wobble slightly as you adjust them, ropes taut but threatening to snap under the strain. You know that tomorrow will demand the same effort multiplied, and your body protests violently at the thought.
The air is heavy with the smell of rain-soaked mud, of rotting reeds, of stagnant water trapped in low places. You notice faint movement in the canals again, small ripples that seem to appear and vanish, water pushed by some unseen force. Your chest tightens. You recognize it as forewarning, a silent signal that the disaster is not distant, that the land is already testing you, preparing you. Night falls, thick and heavy. The wind rises slightly, finding gaps in the half-built windmill, tugging ropes loose, rattling iron fittings. You huddle briefly under the shelter, shivering, listening to the groaning of wood and the whisper of water over earth. Every noise is amplified in the dark. Every shadow feels like a threat. You know sleep will be fragmented, fleeting, necessary, yet dangerous. You lie awake, shivering, mud and sweat caked to your skin. Your body remembers the day's labor as a weight pressing down on your chest and back. The wind presses against the walls of the shelter, testing every seam, every corner. Water drips from the roof, landing with a soft plop on the boards beneath you. You close your eyes, trying to ignore the sensation of unseen pressure, the feeling that the land is moving under and around you, patient, unyielding, waiting for a mistake. In the quiet moments before unconsciousness, you remember why you are here. The promise of the windmill, the hope of controlling the water, the fragile illusion that effort alone can protect you. You are small, and the land is immense. The windmill is incomplete, the water patient, and the storm that will test you is still gathering strength. You cannot see it yet, but your body remembers every warning, every groan of timber, every subtle shift of mud beneath your boots. The disaster is not coming, it is already in the air, in the earth, in the pull of the wind. And still, you are compelled to rise again at dawn, to lift, to pull, to hammer, to test your limits. Because the windmill waits, the land waits, and survival depends on patient, unrelenting labor against forces you barely understand, and that do not understand you in return. You wake to a low, grinding roar in the distance. The air smells sharp now, metallic, like iron bent and twisted. Your stomach drops before your eyes even register the sky. Clouds churn violently above the flat fields, a ceiling of gray-green darkness that presses down as if the world itself has shrunk. The wind has changed. It is no longer patient or testing. It is urgent, insistent, pulling at everything with a force that feels alive.
You try to steady yourself, boots sinking in mud, fingers gripping a plank, but already the boards shift slightly beneath you, pulled by unseen hands. Rain begins as a whisper and escalates instantly, stinging your cheeks, soaking your hair, running down your neck in rivulets that soak the collars of your clothing. The water pools around your boots, sucking at them, cold and merciless. You hear a distant crack, the sound of timber snapping somewhere nearby, sharp and horrifying, echoing across the low landscape. You know it is not just the windmill. Every structure, every tool, every post you have set with aching hands is under the same pressure, and any miscalculation will be punished immediately. You scramble toward the frame, mud dragging at your legs. Rope slips through your gloves as you attempt to secure a beam. The wind catches it, pulling it taut like a living snake. Your heart hammers against your ribs. The unfinished windmill sways dangerously, groaning with each gust. You realize, with a clarity that brings panic, that nothing you have done so far can fully withstand this. You are laboring against forces you do not control.
Water begins to creep across the fields, gathering in shallow depressions, rising over the roots of reeds and grasses. The smell is sharp now, a combination of wet earth, rot, and fear. Each inhale carries it deep into your lungs. You cough, tasting mud and iron and something faintly metallic that turns your stomach. You taste it again and again as the wind pushes water higher, each gust threatening to unbalance the timber you are holding in place. Your hands slip on the ropes, muscles screaming in protest. You drop one plank, then another, watching helplessly as mud slows their descent but does not save them. The windmill groans louder, a deep, threatening sound that resonates in your chest. Every knot you tied is tested, every beam challenged. You move faster, but the storm moves faster still. Your body is wet, cold and exhausted, but fear keeps it alive, jerking you from motion to motion, reacting before thought. A beam snaps somewhere to your left. You feel the vibration through the ground, through your boots, through your spine. Mud squelches underfoot, giving way in small, terrifying shifts. You see the water rising along the edges of the canal, curling over the banks like a living thing, filling in every low place, threatening to swallow tools, posts, lives. You realize that the disaster is no longer coming. It is here. It is tangible, immediate, and you are in the center of it. The rain becomes a wall. You can see only a few feet in front of you. Your clothes cling to your body, dripping water into your boots. You stumble, catch yourself against the frame, taste mud in your mouth. The wind lashes at you from all sides, pushing, pulling, testing your grip. You tighten your hold, heart racing, knowing that even a second of hesitation could mean being thrown into the mud, into the water, into something permanent. The smell of wet wood and iron is overpowering now, sharp and sickening. Each plank, each rope, each nail feels heavier in the storm. You taste iron in your saliva, the mud in your throat. You do not remember swallowing, only that the land and the water are actively working against you. You are small, the windmill is enormous, and you are alone in the center of it, exposed. You hear screaming, though it is distant, though it is unclear. A plank falls somewhere behind you. A rope snaps somewhere to your right. The wind catches a sail, not yet complete, not yet capable, and it wobbles violently. You flinch, dig your heels into mud and brace yourself against the frame. Your arms burn, your shoulders are on fire, your fingers ache from cold and wet and relentless grip. But you do not stop. You cannot. Water floods low spots in the field, rising to your knees, dragging at your boots, pulling at the boards you have secured. You notice reeds bending unnaturally, snapping under pressure. You hear the faint sound of something breaking, cracking, then another. The frame of the windmill lurches dangerously. You can see it sway unnaturally, as if the earth itself is tilting beneath you.
Panic presses into your chest, making each breath a battle. Your vision narrows. Rain hits your eyes in hard sheets. Mud sticks to your face. Your hair hangs plastered across your forehead. Every muscle in your body is taut. You hear the constant roar of the wind, the slap of water against timber, the distant cracking of beams, and you feel small, exposed, mortal. The air tastes of iron, mud, and wet wood. Your stomach tightens into a knot that will not loosen. You try to keep moving, securing ropes, adjusting beams, shoving mud into place. Your gloves are shredded, your hands bleed slightly. Each movement is slow but necessary. The windmill groans under your touch and the relentless pressure of the storm. Every step, every breath, every second is a negotiation with disaster. Water rises past your knees, cold and unyielding. You feel it pushing against your legs, tugging at your balance. A gust hits the frame at the perfect angle to make it sway violently. You stumble, but recover, clutching a beam with both hands, tasting mud and iron and fear. You know instinctively that if it falls, you will not be able to stop it. And yet, for a brief, fragile moment, the storm pauses slightly, a heartbeat of false calm. You look across the flooded field. Canals are spilling, reeds snap under pressure, the unfinished timber groans. The air is thick with water and mud and fear. You are exhausted, soaked, terrified, but alive. Then the wind shifts again, stronger than before, and the water rises faster. A beam snaps, sending a jolt through the mud, a shock that reverberates to your core. You stumble, another rope pulls loose. The windmill leans, groaning. You brace yourself, arms straining, heart hammering, mud sucking at your boots, water rising around your legs. The storm is not just around you, it is inside you, a living force testing every nerve, every bone, every decision. You cannot stop, you cannot flee. You can only brace, adjust, survive the seconds as they pass, knowing that the disaster has begun, that the land, water, and wind are indifferent, and that the labor you have poured into these timbers is already being judged. Night comes, though it brings no relief. Rain drives horizontally across the field. Water rises above your knees, cold, relentless. Timber groans, ropes scream, and every tool you touch feels slippery and untrustworthy. You taste mud and iron in your mouth and grit your teeth against exhaustion. Every nerve in your body is alert, every sense sharpened. You are alive, and yet you know how thin that line is. And you realize that this is only the beginning. The windmill, the land, the water, they have already decided what they will take. You do not yet know what or who will survive. All you can do is hold, brace, and wait. You wake to the smell of mud and decay, thick and unyielding, pressing into your lungs like water. The windmill stands, but it is battered, groaning with each gust, leaning slightly as if questioning its own survival. The floodwaters have not yet receded, curling into low depressions, finding weaknesses in the land, seeping into places you thought solid. Your body is stiff, muscles screaming in protest from yesterday's labor, yesterday's terror. Your fingers are cracked, hands raw, joints locked into positions that make every movement an effort. You try to rise, but the mud clings to your boots, tugging, pulling, reminding you that even standing is a battle. Hunger gnaws at you. It has grown from a dull background ache into a sharp, insistent claw in your stomach. The bread you rationed is gone. The cheese, moldy from damp, has been eaten despite the taste. Water is everywhere, but you hesitate, tasting its stagnant tang, weighing the risk of disease against the immediacy of thirst. The wind is relentless. It presses against your body as you move, bites at your clothes, pushes against your chest with an almost sentient weight. Every sound is amplified. the slap of water against embankments, the creak of the half-built windmill, the distant groan of broken timber drifting in the flood. The sky is gray, low, oppressive, and unchanging. There is no relief in light, no warmth in color. Time has become meaningless. Every movement, every step, every breath blends into an endless struggle against water, wind, and exhaustion.
You begin to see things at the edge of your vision, shapes that vanish when you blink, shadows that shift unnaturally across the water, reeds that move without wind. You tell yourself it is hunger, dehydration, and fatigue conspiring to distort reality. Still, you feel their presence, tangible and threatening, as if the landscape itself is watching, waiting for you to falter. The mud under your boots seems to shift at times, carrying the faint impression of shapes beneath, forms that are gone before you can identify them. Your heart hammers with every imagined movement. Your stomach twists painfully. Hunger is no longer a mere discomfort. It is sharp, gnawing, demanding immediate attention, driving irrational thoughts. You scavenge along the banks of the canals, pulling weeds, roots, anything edible, tasting them with reluctance, tasting mud with them, wondering if survival justifies ingestion. Each bite offers relief that is fleeting. Each swallow brings the bitter knowledge that the hunger will return, stronger, sharper, and more consuming. The windmill groans, a deep resonant sound that shakes the ground beneath your feet. The floodwater rises slightly, reaching higher over your boots, pushing against your legs, tugging at your balance. You brace yourself against a post, shoving mud beneath it to anchor it, but the earth is soft, pliable, waiting for the next failure. Every plank you touch seems alive with resistance, every rope taut and treacherous. You realize that the storm is not just outside you, it has entered the timbers, the mud, the water, the air itself. Survival is no longer a choice, it is a desperate negotiation. As night approaches, hallucinations grow bolder. The wind carries whispers, human voices, cries of laborers, calls that vanish when you strain to locate them. Reeds brush against your arms, though the air is still. Shapes lurk in shadows, at first only the corner of your eye, then unmistakably moving, retreating when faced head-on. You try to convince yourself it is the exhaustion, the hunger, the damp playing tricks. Yet you flinch instinctively, each sound and motion a reminder that danger is never distant here. You watch as fellow workers, the few who remain awake and able, stumble along the mud, faces pale, eyes wide with fear and fatigue. One collapses into the floodwater, and the others rush to help him. You are forced to step over him, mud sucking at your boots, water rising to your knees, unsure whether he is alive or already claimed by the earth. There is no ceremony, no words, just survival. The land demands it, the water takes it, and the storm judges you silently. The windmill groans ominously. Timbers twist and warp under pressure. You hear the snap of a rope, the subtle shift of a beam, and your muscles tighten involuntarily. Your chest pounds, your stomach twists in fear and hunger combined, a primal knowledge that every second counts, that the unfinished structure could collapse at any moment, taking you with it. You grip ropes, haul timbers, brace posts, shoving mud beneath beams with raw, trembling hands. The land is unyielding, indifferent, and the effort is endless. You stumble, slip, fall into water-cold mud, shivering violently as it seeps into every fold of your clothing. Your gloves are shredded, fingers bleeding, nails broken and sharp. You taste the iron and mud with every movement, and for a brief moment consider giving in to the exhaustion. But the windmill groans again, the floodwater rises, and survival is no longer negotiable. You struggle to your feet, each step a deliberate choice, each breath a victory. Time becomes meaningless. Hours, days, or minutes, the storm does not care. Hunger gnaws, fatigue drags at every muscle, and fear sharpens every sense. Shadows move, Water shifts, the wind screams, the smell of earth and decay saturates your lungs. Every step is a negotiation with death. Every breath is a bargain. You hallucinate friends who are not there, hear voices that do not exist, see figures emerging from reeds and shadows, only to vanish when faced. Your mind frays. Reality bends to the pressure of exhaustion and fear. You feel despair pressing into your chest, heavier than the floodwater rising over your legs. Every task is monumental. Every plank, rope, and beam demands absolute attention. You taste iron in your mouth, the mud under your nails, the sweat and blood mingled in your hair. The windmill stands half complete, leaning, groaning, threatened by every gust, every wave, every error. And you realize with sickening clarity that no human effort alone can guarantee survival. The land is patient, the water is persistent, and you are fragile. Night deepens. The floodwater laps higher around your knees and waist, dragging at your boots and soaking your clothes completely. The windmill creaks, threatening collapse, testing every joint you have fastened. Hunger and fear have hollowed your stomach, drained your energy. Your vision blurs, shapes and sounds blur together. Your heartbeat pounds in your ears louder than the storm. Every instinct tells you to flee, but the unfinished windmill stands between you and certain death, and the land will not allow weakness. You clutch a beam, shoving mud beneath it, pressing against ropes with raw hands. Water reaches higher, wind screams across the fields, shadows shift unnaturally. You shiver violently, taste mud and iron, see shapes that vanish, hear whispers that taunt you with impossibility. Fear has become tangible, a weight pressing into your bones. Hunger has become sharp, gnawing, a constant companion. Exhaustion has fractured your mind. And yet, despite it all, you continue, because survival is not optional. Because the land, the water, and the wind demand it. Because the windmill, fragile, unfinished, groaning, is the only defense against forces far older and stronger than you. And you know, deep in the marrow of your bones, that the storm is not finished, that the flood will not relent, and that every second from here on is a fight to remain human in a world that has decided you are insignificant. You wake to a world that no longer feels real. The windmill stands, half ruined, swaying slightly in the persistent wind. The floodwater surrounds you, reaching higher than yesterday, pulling at your boots, tugging insistently at your legs. Every movement is laborious. Every breath tastes of iron, mud, and wet wood. Hunger gnaws sharply at your stomach. Fatigue coils around your limbs, dragging your muscles, making each step a conscious negotiation with pain. The wind carries whispers now, subtle and strange. At first you think it is the reeds, the rush of water, the groaning of timber, but the whispers are unmistakably human. They echo faintly across the water. They call your name. They ask questions you cannot answer. You strain your ears, your chest tightening, heart hammering, but the sounds vanish when you try to locate them. You realize with creeping horror that your mind is inventing voices to fill the emptiness, and yet, sometimes, they feel almost real, tangible enough to make you flinch. Shapes move in the distance, shifting at the edge of your vision. One moment a figure stands where no one could have been. Another, a shadow lingers among reeds that should be still. You blink, and the shapes are gone. You tell yourself it is exhaustion, hunger, the water and wind playing cruel tricks on your mind. But your body reacts anyway, muscle memory tightening your fingers around ropes, jerking your body towards safety, even when there is nothing there.
Hunger is relentless. Each rationed bite of stale bread, each chew of moldy cheese barely touches the emptiness gnawing in your stomach. Water is everywhere, but you hesitate to drink it. You taste iron and sediment. You weigh sickness against thirst and realize the decision has no correct answer. You scavenge along the embankments for roots, weeds, anything edible. Mud clings to your hands as you dig, and every mouthful tastes faintly of decay, of the earth itself. The windmill groans constantly, a living thing under duress. Timber twists, ropes strain, and each gust threatens collapse. You clutch a beam, shoving mud beneath it, adjusting ropes, repeating motions that have become a blur of labor and survival. Your body aches in ways you cannot name, shoulders screaming, joints locking, fingers raw. Your clothes cling with wet weight, pressed against your skin by rain, sweat, and mud. Your hands slip, nails scrape, and you taste blood with the iron of the mud. Sleep is a distant memory. Each time you close your eyes, the landscape warps, reeds writhe like serpents, floodwater moves unnaturally, rising and falling with impossible rhythm. Shapes loom in shadows, then vanish. The wind carries laughter, or screams, or both. Your mind fractures slightly with every hallucination, every imagined movement. You do not know which is real anymore, which danger is tangible, which is a figment of starvation and fatigue.
You notice the villagers, the few still able to move. They are pale, haunted, silent, except for occasional cries or mutters under breath. One stumbles into the floodwater, cries muffled as it seeps into the night. Another collapses near a timber post, clinging weakly to a rope. You feel an overwhelming urge to help, but your own body protests violently. Your muscles burn, your stomach twists, your mind screams. You are tethered to survival as tightly as the beams are tethered to the ground. You do what you can, pulling, bracing, hauling, shoving, each action a battle against exhaustion and fear. Night falls again, and darkness is oppressive, heavy as water over your head. The wind presses against you, finding gaps in your clothes, your skin, your sanity. Floodwater laps at your knees and waist, sucking at your balance, dragging at your boots. You stumble, fall, taste mud and iron, and rise again. Shapes move just beyond perception, voices call from nowhere. Reeds snap under phantom weight. You flinch with every sound, every subtle shift, every whisper. The hunger becomes a gnawing obsession. You eat what you find, sometimes swallowing mud and roots with the morsels. Each bite brings temporary relief, but the emptiness returns sharper, a constant reminder that your body is failing faster than your mind. You feel lightheaded. Vertigo edges in. Every step is a negotiation with dizziness, with the subtle sway of the floodwater, with the wind that seems determined to knock you down. Your hands are covered in cuts, blisters, and mud. Your gloves are shredded. Your hair sticks to your face, to your neck, soaked and matted with rain, sweat, and grime. The floodwater is rising slowly but surely. The windmill groans, sways, and creaks with every gust. The ropes strain under the weight of rain-soaked timbers. You know it could fall at any moment, could crush everything, including you. And still you continue. You clutch ropes, brace beams, shove mud beneath posts. The whispers, the hallucinations, the shapes at the edge of vision, they press in on you, but you do not stop. You are tethered to survival, to the unfinished windmill, to the fragile hope that effort can still hold back disaster. Exhaustion and fear reach deep into your bones. Your chest feels tight, lungs heavy, your stomach twists painfully. Every step, every breath, every movement is deliberate, conscious, a negotiation with forces you cannot fight and may not survive. You taste iron, mud, and blood. You see shapes in every shadow, hear voices in every rustle of reeds.
The windmill groans under the strain of your labor, as if it too is alive and questioning your worthiness. And in these long, endless hours, you understand that the disaster is not just outside you, it is inside you. It is in your hunger, in your exhaustion, in your mind bending under the weight of fear and hallucination. Every shadow, every whisper, every subtle movement of water or timber is a test of your sanity as much as your body. You are small, and the land is immense. The windmill is incomplete, fragile, and you are tethered to it by effort, hope, and terror. You shiver violently as night presses down, mud and water seeping into every fold of your clothing. You are soaked, trembling, hallucinating, starving, and yet you brace against every gust, every sway, every threat. Survival is a negotiation with the earth itself. Every movement is a test, every breath is a challenge, and you know with terrifying clarity that this is only the beginning of what the land and water demand.
You wake to silence, or what passes for silence in a world that has not forgiven you. The windmill groans in the distance, timbers creaking under the pressure of the rising water. You are soaked to the bone, shivering, hands raw, muscles screaming. Your stomach is hollow, twisted with hunger that no morsel can satisfy. Your breath comes in short, ragged bursts, tasting mud, iron, and something faintly metallic that clings to your tongue. The land is unyielding. The floodwaters lap at your boots, tugging insistently, reminding you that the earth is patient but never forgiving. A scream breaks through the fog, jagged and human. You stumble toward the sound, boots sinking in mud, water climbing past your knees. One of the workers has collapsed, limp against a plank, head resting in the cold, dark water. You do not know if he is alive or already claimed by the flood. His eyes flutter, wide and uncomprehending. You reach for him, but the mud pulls at your legs, the water drags at your grip, and the wind screams so loudly that the sound of his struggle barely reaches you. You pull, brace, and lift, feeling the weight of another human body, heavy with fear, weakness, and cold. The others nearby do the same, but it is slow, awkward, uncertain. Hands slip on ropes, boots slide through mud, water splashes over you, numbing fingers and toes. One body is too heavy, one rope snaps, one post collapses slightly, and the windmill groans sharply, as if warning you that even your combined effort is inadequate. The worker falls back into the water. You hear the faint sucking sound as the mud and floodwater claim him. You try to reach again, but the water resists. You are forced to step back, boots sinking, hands trembling. He is gone. The windmill sways above you, indifferent. Your stomach tightens in nausea, hunger, and shock. You taste iron in your mouth, sweat and rain mixing with mud, grief, and fear. Every nerve is taut, every muscle screaming. Yet you continue to brace the windmill, to pull ropes, to shove mud beneath posts. Survival demands it, the land demands it, the water demands it, and yet the taste of loss lingers in your throat like blood. Shapes move at the edge of your vision, shadows of the fallen, hallucinations, or perhaps warnings. You flinch at every rustle of reeds, every slight shift in the water, every creak of timber. You cannot trust your eyes, your ears, your mind. Hunger, exhaustion, and fear have fractured your perception. Voices whisper just out of reach, calling names you do not recognize, speaking words that vanish before you can comprehend them. The floodwater is higher now, reaching past your knees, dragging at your boots with a subtle insistence that threatens to unbalance you. Mud sucks at your feet. The wind presses against your chest, forcing you to lean into it to remain upright. You shiver violently, body trembling in cold, hunger, and terror. Every movement is deliberate, every breath is measured, every second is a negotiation with forces beyond your control. Another scream cuts through the storm, closer this time. You look toward the sound and see another worker trapped between timbers and mud. He struggles, panic written across his face. You rush toward him, but the mud grabs your boots, pulling you backward. You lunge, reaching with trembling arms, tasting the bitter tang of iron and mud, feeling the raw scrape of rope against your palms. You grasp him, pull, brace. But the weight of water, mud, exhaustion, and fear is too much. He slips, disappears beneath the flood, leaving only the faintest ripple. Your chest tightens, your stomach twists painfully. You taste blood, sweat, and mud. Fear presses into every joint, every nerve, every fiber of your being. The windmill groans sharply above you, swaying slightly with each gust. Every beam, every rope, every plank is a test, a fragile barrier between life and being claimed by the land and water. You are painfully aware of how small and fragile you are, how insignificant your effort seems against the immensity of the disaster. Silence descends briefly after the screams. You are left shivering, soaked, hands raw, body trembling, standing amidst floodwater that has claimed so much already. Shadows move at the edges of your vision. The windmill sways gently above, groaning as though it too mourns what has been lost. Your mind drifts dangerously close to despair, yet you force yourself to act. You secure a rope, brace a post, shove mud beneath a beam. Labor is survival. Effort is resistance. Every motion is a defiance of the flood and the wind and the cruel patience of the land. Hours pass. The floodwater does not retreat. Hunger grows sharper. Fatigue seeps deeper into your bones. Your body aches violently, every muscle screaming. You taste mud and iron with every breath. Shadows at the edge of your vision flicker and shift, hallucinations or omens. Whispers call from nowhere. You flinch at every noise, every gust of wind, every creak of timber, every subtle movement of water feels like a threat. And yet, you continue. You continue because survival leaves no alternative. You continue because the windmill must not fall. You continue because the land, the water, the wind demand it. You continue despite the hunger, the exhaustion, the grief, the fear, the hallucinations, the loss of friends who have already been claimed. You continue because stopping means death. Night falls. The floodwater reaches higher, dragging at your legs, tugging at your balance. Timber groans above. Ropes strain and squeal under tension. Every motion is deliberate, every breath a negotiation with the storm, the land, the water, and your own failing body. You taste iron, mud, sweat, and grief. Shapes move at the edges of vision. Whispers call from the unseen. Your mind frays at the edges, but you continue. And as the darkness presses down, as the floodwater laps at your knees and the windmill groans above you, you understand fully that survival has a price. You have paid in fear, in hunger, in raw hands, in shattered sleep. You have paid in grief for those who will not rise again. And the storm, the land, the water, they are patient, and they are not done.
You wake to a wind that is no longer just forceful. It feels deliberate, targeting you with every gust. It pushes against your chest, tugs at your arms, whips across your legs with icy insistence. The floodwater reaches your waist now, pulling at your boots, tugging at your balance, as if the land itself wants to claim you. The windmill leans more sharply, groaning and twisting under the strain of water, mud, and your desperate effort. You taste iron in your mouth. Mud coats your lips. Your body trembles violently from exhaustion, cold, and the relentless pull of fear. Shapes move in the water, dark forms that shift unnaturally just beyond your vision. You flinch at every ripple, every shadow, every movement. You cannot trust your eyes. You cannot trust your ears. The whispers in the wind have grown louder, clearer, almost intelligible. They call your name. They ask questions you cannot answer. Sometimes they laugh. Sometimes they cry. You try to locate them, but they vanish instantly, leaving only dread curling through your chest. Hunger gnaws painfully, sharper than yesterday. You scavenge roots, weeds, anything edible from the banks, tasting mud and decay with each bite. Every swallow is desperation. Your hands are shredded from rope and timber. Your clothes cling like second skin, soaked through with rain, sweat, and mud. You shiver violently. Every muscle aches. Every joint is stiff, raw, unyielding. You clutch a rope, brace a beam, shove mud beneath posts. The windmill creaks and groans, threatening collapse with every gust. You cannot stop. You cannot rest. You cannot allow weakness, because the land, the water, and the wind have already claimed so much and will claim more without hesitation. The hallucinations intensify. Reeds twist unnaturally. Water ripples in impossible directions. Shadows emerge from nowhere and vanish when confronted. You see faces where none exist. You hear voices calling from the flood, distant cries of the workers who have already disappeared. You flinch at every sound, every movement, every subtle shift of wind or water. Fear coils around your chest, squeezing, tightening, making breath a battle. Your stomach twists painfully, empty yet gnawing. Hunger and terror are indistinguishable now, intertwined in your muscles, your nerves, your mind. You glimpse movement in the distance, a figure standing in the floodwater, watching. You blink. It is gone. Your pulse races. You taste blood, iron, and mud. Your hands shake. Every step through the flood is a conscious decision. Every motion of your arms, every pull on a rope, every shove of mud beneath timber is a negotiation with forces far stronger than you. The windmill groans again, swaying dangerously, ropes squealing, beams bending. You know collapse is imminent. You know that even one misstep could mean being claimed by the water, the mud, the twisted timbers.
Hunger claws at your stomach, a sharp, gnawing pain that clouds your thoughts. You chew roots and mud, tasting decay with each bite, convincing yourself that survival justifies it. But the emptiness does not ease. It grows, twisting your thoughts, distorting your perception. Shapes drift in the water, shadows lurk in reeds, whispers echo endlessly. The line between reality and hallucination has vanished. You cannot trust anything you see, hear, or even feel. The windmill sways more violently now. One rope snaps somewhere above you, sending a shock of terror through your body. A beam shifts. You stumble in the floodwater, bracing with trembling hands. Mud clings to your boots. Water tugs at your legs. You taste iron and mud, your stomach twisting with nausea and hunger. Shapes appear and vanish at the edge of your vision. Voices call from the flood, distant and ghostly. You flinch instinctively, muscle memory saving you from a misstep you did not consciously plan. Night falls, heavy and unyielding. The wind presses harder. The floodwater climbs higher. You are waist-deep, shivering violently, hands raw, body trembling with cold and terror. Every movement is deliberate, every breath a struggle. Your vision narrows, shadows twist, shapes lurk, whispers call. Hunger and exhaustion gnaw deeper with each passing moment. The windmill groans, threatening to collapse, swaying as if the world itself is testing you. You cling to ropes, brace beams, shove mud beneath posts.
The hallucinations press in, relentless. Faces appear and vanish, voices call, shadows twist, shapes shift in the flood. Every instinct screams that something is watching, that the land itself has turned against you. Fear is no longer a sensation, it is a living presence, pressing into your bones, filling every cavity, curling into your chest. Hours pass. The wind does not relent. The floodwater rises. Hunger, exhaustion, and terror merge into a single overwhelming force. You stumble, flinch, taste mud and iron, sweat and blood. The windmill creaks dangerously above you. Shadows move, whispers call. Your mind frays at the edges, yet you cannot stop. Survival demands motion, action, resistance. And in the dead, cooled hours of the night, you understand fully that the land, the water, and the wind are patient but merciless. They will take what they are owed. Every hallucination, every shadow, every whisper is a warning. Every movement, every breath, every heartbeat is a negotiation with forces you cannot hope to control. You are small, fragile, human, and yet you continue, tethered to survival by fear, by hunger, by exhaustion, and by the fragile hope that you can still hold the windmill against the storm.
You wake to the faintest difference in the air. The wind is still relentless, still tugging at your clothes, biting at your skin. But there is a subtle shift, a rhythm in the gusts that wasn't there before. The floodwater still laps at your knees and waist, dragging at your boots, but it moves with a slightly slower, more predictable pattern. Your body is numb from cold, exhaustion, and hunger, yet you notice it immediately. Someone or something is moving through the storm. Not a shadow, not a hallucination. Real figures moving carefully across the flooded field toward the windmill. Your chest tightens, your stomach twists. Hunger is still there, gnawing at your insides, but fear pulses stronger, sharper. You cannot yet allow yourself relief. Every step, every movement, every breath has been a test, and you are not sure you have passed. Yet, instinctively, you wave your arms, stamp your boots, try to make contact to announce that you are alive, that you are here, that you need help. Your voice cracks as it cuts across the wind, wet and raw, barely audible, but the figures respond. They are real. They are coming. You brace against a beam of the windmill, muscles screaming, joints stiff and trembling, mud sucking at your boots. The floodwater pushes against your legs, pulling at your balance, but you do not collapse. You are too aware of what is coming, too aware that for the first time in days, survival may actually be within reach. The windmill groans under your grip, ropes taut, timbers creaking, but it holds, for now. The figures draw closer. One calls out, voice muffled by wind and rain, and you strain to hear, to recognize, to respond. Relief and fear mix inside you, a violent cocktail that presses into your chest and gut. You step forward through the floodwater, boots heavy with mud, arms shaking. They reach you, hands grasping yours, hauling you toward a slightly more stable embankment. Every step is an effort, but they guide you. You stumble, you fall, you taste mud and iron and sweat and fear, and still they do not abandon you. The floodwater is relentless, rising higher, tugging at your legs, threatening to sweep you into the low, dark channels that have already claimed others. You shiver violently, teeth chattering, muscles locking and releasing in spasms of cold and exhaustion. Yet the rescuers persist, their hands firm and steady, guiding you, lifting you, keeping you from being swallowed by the water and mud. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, someone carries more weight than you do. You are pulled onto slightly higher ground. Mud slides under your boots. Water soaks your clothing. Your hands are shredded, raw, trembling violently. Every nerve is taut, but you are alive. You are still here. You taste iron and mud, blood from cuts in your fingers, sweat mingling with rain on your face, and you feel, for the first time, a fragile sense of relief. It is not comfort. It is not safety.
It is simply recognition that you have not yet been claimed entirely. The rescuers work quickly, shouting instructions over the wind, moving through the flood with precision you cannot hope to replicate in your weakened state. They lift timbers, brace ropes, redirect water away from weakened posts. You follow, barely conscious of your own movements, acting as best you can, knowing that every motion may be crucial. The windmill groans, but seems to hold longer under this combined effort, swaying less violently than before.
Hunger and exhaustion claw at your body, a constant nagging reminder of what the storm has demanded. Your vision swims with fatigue. Shapes move in the corners of your eyes, reeds bending, water rippling, shadows stretching unnaturally. But you know now that some of the shapes are real, that some voices are real. You are not hallucinating entirely. You are being saved, though you cannot yet believe it. Hours pass. The storm does not entirely relent, but the floodwater begins to recede very slightly, tugging less aggressively at your boots. You are pulled to a slightly drier section of the field, sitting in the mud with rescuers pressing blankets into your soaked body. You shiver violently, chattering teeth against the cold. Hunger remains, gnawing and sharp, but fear loosens its grip slightly, just enough for you to notice that the windmill has not fallen. Not yet, not entirely. You taste iron, mud, sweat, and blood in your mouth, yet the knowledge that you have survived this far presses gently against the raw, taut edges of your mind. You are aware that not everyone has made it. Friends, colleagues, neighbors, some have been claimed by floodwater, mud, or collapsing timbers. You feel the sting of grief, the weight of loss. Yet even as your mind trembles under exhaustion and shock, you cling to the fragile knowledge that you are alive. Night falls again, but there is a subtle difference. The wind is still cold, still biting, but it no longer carries the same sense of omnipotent threat. The floodwater laps gently, the timbers of the windmill creak less violently, and the rescuers move with deliberate, calm efficiency. You sit in the mud, shivering, trembling, tasting iron and mud, feeling the raw ache of muscles and joints. Relief is tentative, fragile, almost alien, but it is real. Someone has arrived. Someone has not abandoned you. And in the quiet moments between gusts of wind and laps of floodwater, you realize something profound. Survival has a cost, a terrible, unyielding price. Hunger, fear, exhaustion, hallucinations, loss, they have all been exacted from you. And yet, you are still here. You are still human. The windmill stands, battered and incomplete, but it stands. The floodwaters have begun to yield, if only slightly. You are alive, tethered tenuously to the fragile hope that some measure of safety may finally be within reach.
You wake to a muted world. The wind has dropped slightly, though it still presses cold and insistent against your soaked clothes. The floodwater, though still present, laps less aggressively at your legs, retreating ever so slightly from its highest reach. Mud clings to your boots and pants, heavy with cold and water, a constant reminder of hours spent wading through the relentless tide. You shiver violently, muscles trembling from exhaustion and chill, and taste iron and mud in your mouth, bitter, familiar, unavoidable. The rescuers are moving more confidently now, lifting and hauling, guiding those who are still weak and trembling through the mire. You are one of them, barely able to lift your own weight, yet forced to contribute where you can. Each motion is deliberate, slow, and measured. Your fingers are raw, bleeding from rope and timber. Every step is a negotiation with pain and exhaustion. The floodwater pulls at your boots, the wind tugs at your balance, yet you stumble forward, knowing that stillness is not survival. Some of the others are gone, claimed by mud, water, or collapsed timbers. You feel the weight of grief pressing into your chest, sharp and unrelenting. Faces you will not see again flash in your mind.
You taste their absence with every bite of stale bread or root you manage to chew. You cannot afford to linger on it too long, though. The windmill still groans, ropes are taut, timbers strain, and the land shows no mercy for hesitation. Survival requires motion, no matter how weak or slow. The rescuers shout brief instructions over the wind, guiding the survivors to slightly higher ground. You follow as best you can, boots stuck in mud, fingers trembling as you grab at ropes for support. Every step requires focus, every breath is measured. Your body protests violently, muscles scream, joints lock, teeth chatter, but you are carried forward by the faint thread of hope that someone, finally, has come to help. The windmill sways less violently now, though its timbers creak sharply under every gust. You taste iron and sweat and mud in your mouth and realize that every nail, every rope, every beam you secured earlier may have been the difference between survival and collapse. The storm has begun to loosen its grip, but it is still present, still dangerous. You are painfully aware that any sudden movement, any misstep, could undo the fragile progress of the last hours. Rescuers lift boards, tighten ropes, brace posts. You try to assist, muscles quivering, lungs aching. Every motion is slow, calculated, deliberate. The floodwater reaches only to your knees in most places now, though pockets of waist-high water remain, tugging and pulling unpredictably. The mud is thick, clinging to every inch of exposed skin, every boot, every piece of clothing. You taste it constantly, iron and decay mingling with sweat and blood. The other survivors move cautiously alongside you, pale, shaking, haunted. You glance at their faces, hunger, fear, and exhaustion written in every line, every sunken eye. Some cry quietly, tears lost in the rain and mud. Some stare blankly, staring past the windmill, past the water, past the world itself. And you realize with grim clarity that even in rescue, trauma is not relieved. The storm may be easing, the floodwaters receding, but the weight of what has happened presses down as heavily as ever.
You sit briefly on a partially raised beam, shivering, tasting iron, mud, sweat, and faintly bitter blood in your mouth. Your hands shake violently, bleeding in thin streams where rope has cut and timber has scraped. A rescuer presses a blanket against your shoulders. The warmth is immediate, though fleeting. Your body trembles uncontrollably, heart racing, chest tight. You take a breath and feel the first small measure of relief, fragile but undeniable. Someone has reached you. Someone has not abandoned you. The windmill groans but does not collapse. The floodwater retreats further, lapping quietly at the edges of the field. You taste mud and iron and relief. Survival is still tentative, but it is survival nonetheless. Every nerve is taut, every muscle aching, every thought weighted with exhaustion, grief, and fear. Yet you are alive. As night falls, the rescuers continue to guide the survivors to safer ground. The wind is less violent, though still cold and insistent. The floodwater retreats slowly, carrying debris, fallen timber, and remnants of the storm with it. You sit, shivering, tasting mud, iron, and sweat, feeling each heartbeat as if it were a small victory. You are raw, battered, starving, and traumatized, but alive. And as the hours pass, you realize something fragile but profound. Survival has been earned through terror, exhaustion, hunger, fear, and loss. Rescue does not erase what has happened. It does not erase the grief, the hallucinations, the near-death moments, the bodies claimed by water and mud. But it offers a tenuous promise that some portion of the human spirit can endure, that even in the face of overwhelming force, survival, however battered, remains possible. You wake to silence that is almost unbearable.
The wind has faded to a constant whisper. The floodwater has receded from its highest reach, leaving mud, debris, and the remnants of everything that was swept away. The windmill still stands, leaning slightly, groaning faintly with each breath of air, a fragile sentinel over land scarred by disaster. You are soaked through, shivering violently, every muscle screaming, every joint raw from hours of strain and cold. Hunger gnaws at your stomach, sharp and unyielding, reminding you that your body has endured more than it can fully process. The survivors are scattered across the field, some sitting or lying in the mud, some leaning weakly against the windmill, others staring blankly at the distance, eyes wide with exhaustion and disbelief. You recognize some, the ones who made it through the flood, and you see immediately what the storm has done. Faces pale, skin bruised and scraped, eyes haunted, hands trembling. You taste iron and mud in your mouth, the bitterness mingling with fatigue, grief, and shock. The floodwater has left behind a landscape altered, scarred, and unrecognizable. Timbers, ropes, and debris lie scattered across the fields. The soil is churned, soft and treacherous underfoot. You step carefully, boots squelching, mud giving way slightly with every movement. Each step is heavy, deliberate. Every breath tastes of iron, sweat, and earth. Every nerve in your body feels frayed, taut with the memory of terror, exhaustion, and hunger. You sit on a partially upright beam of the windmill, shivering violently, hands raw and bleeding, tasting the bitter tang of mud and iron in your mouth. Your mind is sluggish, slow to process, yet you are fully aware of the enormity of what has passed. The storm is over. The floodwater has receded. The rescuers have guided the survivors to slightly higher ground. But the horror, the exhaustion, the near-death experiences, the hallucinations, they remain, pressing into your chest like a heavy weight you cannot shake.
The memories press in, shapes moving in the flood, whispers in the wind, shadows at the edges of your vision, friends and co-workers claimed by mud and water, the constant gnawing hunger, the raw ache of your muscles, the cold biting at your bones, the relentless pull of fear. You taste iron and blood in your mouth, sweat mingled with mud and water. Each heartbeat is a reminder of what you endured. Each breath is a negotiation with fatigue and lingering terror. You notice others around you, the survivors, each dealing with their own horror. Some cry quietly, tears lost in the mud and rain. Some stare blankly at the horizon, as if expecting another storm, another disaster, another force of nature to reclaim what it has not yet taken. You feel the weight of shared trauma, a collective exhaustion that is almost palpable. The floodwater has gone, but it has left its mark, not just on the land, but on every person who survived. The windmill groans faintly, a reminder that survival is never final. Every timber, every rope, every post that withstood the storm is a fragile monument to human effort and endurance, but also to luck, chance, and the forces beyond your control. You taste iron and mud again, bitterness lingering in your mouth, and realize that no celebration, no relief, no gratitude can erase the raw experience of what you have endured. Your body is battered, your hands are raw and bleeding, your muscles scream with fatigue, hunger gnaws at your stomach with unrelenting sharpness, your mind is frayed at the edges, replaying moments of terror and hallucination. Yet you remain alive. You are raw, traumatized, but alive. And that knowledge is fragile comfort, a thread of humanity that has survived when so much else has been claimed by water, mud, and storm. As the hours pass, you sit quietly, shivering, tasting mud, iron, sweat, and blood. You notice small movements around you,
survivors slowly rising, helping each other, collecting debris, tending wounds. The storm may be over, but the work of recovery, of processing trauma, has only just begun. You understand that survival has a price: hunger, exhaustion, grief, hallucinations, loss. You have paid that price fully, and it has left its mark. And in the quiet aftermath, as the windmill creaks faintly in the distance and the floodwaters have fully retreated, you realize something fundamental. The land is indifferent. The water is indifferent. The wind is indifferent. You survived, but the world has not forgiven you. You are left with the raw memory of terror, hunger, loss, and the fragile, unsteady knowledge that you remain human, that you remain alive, and that life, in its cruel persistence, continues.
You wake to a world that seems smaller now, flattened by the memory of what you endured. The floodwaters are gone, retreating quietly into the canals and lowlands, leaving mud, debris, and the battered remnants of the windmill behind. The air is thick with the smell of wet earth, rotting vegetation, and iron. Your clothes are stiff and caked with mud, your skin raw, your hands bleeding where rope and timber tore through calluses and gloves. Every movement aches, but you move anyway, because stillness reminds you too sharply of how close the storm came to taking you entirely. The survivors are scattered around you, some walking slowly, some sitting in mud, some staring blankly at the horizon. Faces are pale, haunted, eyes wide with shock and disbelief. You see the empty spots where friends once stood, their absence a hollow ache in your chest. You taste iron and blood and mud in your mouth and realize that no morsel of food can erase the hunger, nor any comfort erase the grief. Each breath is a reminder of what you survived and what you lost. The windmill, your labor and terror made manifest, leans slightly, groaning softly in the distance. You approach it, boots heavy in mud, fingers raw and trembling. Each plank, rope, and beam tells the story of hours spent resisting nature's fury, of hunger clawing through your stomach, of exhaustion dragging your body to the edge of collapse. The structure stands because you and others refused to let it fall. It is fragile, it is incomplete, it is alive with the memory of struggle. The land around you is quiet now, deceptively calm. The flood has left its mark: churned earth, snapped reeds, scattered debris, the occasional twisted timber jutting from mud like a scar. You taste mud and iron, bitter and unrelenting. Every sense is heightened: the low groan of the windmill, the soft gurgle of retreating water, the squelch of mud beneath your boots, the cold pressing into your bones, the ache of muscles and joints that have worked beyond their capacity. You are aware of every tiny detail because they are reminders that you are alive. Your mind wanders, unbidden, to what has happened. The hallucinations, the whispers, the shadows at the edges of your vision. The screams of those claimed by the floodwater echo faintly in your memory, a chorus that will not fade. You feel the weight of each lost life pressing on your chest, a burden that no rescue, no survival, no temporary reprieve can remove. Hunger, exhaustion, and fear have left marks deeper than scars. Your body remembers every shock, every slip, every cold pull of water, every snap of timber, every sharp gust of wind. The rescuers continue their work, guiding survivors to higher ground, offering blankets, distributing food and water.
You take what you can, hands trembling as you grip the offerings, tasting iron and mud still, a reminder that even nourishment is temporary. Relief is thin, fragile, a candle in the darkness. You feel it, but it is shadowed by grief, exhaustion, and the lingering terror of what nearly consumed you. Night falls slowly. The windmill groans faintly in the dark. You sit in mud, shivering, blood, sweat, and water mixing on your skin. Your stomach twists in hunger. Your hands ache, raw and bleeding. Your mind replays the storm endlessly, the rising water, the swaying timber, the whispers, the shadows, the screams, the loss. Each replay carries the same sharp weight, the same gnawing sense of fragility. Survival has been earned at a cost too heavy to measure.
And yet, you remain alive. Your breath comes ragged but steady. Your body, battered and raw, still responds. Your mind, though frayed and haunted, still perceives, still remembers, still bears witness. You realize that survival is not the end of horror, nor the end of loss, nor the end of exhaustion. Survival is merely continuation. It is carrying the weight of what has been endured and what cannot be forgotten. You rise slowly, shivering violently, boots heavy with mud, body aching in every joint and muscle. You taste iron, mud, sweat, and blood once more. The windmill stands behind you, battered, incomplete, leaning but still present. It is a monument to survival, yes, but also a monument to fear, hunger, grief, and exhaustion. Every timber, every rope, every plank tells the story of what it cost to remain. And in the quiet aftermath, with the floodwaters finally gone and the storm a memory etched into every fiber of your being, you understand something essential. The land is indifferent. The water is indifferent. The wind is indifferent. Survival is not reward. Survival is responsibility. You are left with the raw knowledge that you endured when others did not, that the price has been paid in fear, hunger, exhaustion, grief, and trauma, and you are tethered to it forever. You walk slowly away from the windmill, boots squelching in mud, body raw, mind heavy. Every step is measured, every breath is deliberate. Every heartbeat reminds you that you are alive, but also that life carries the memory of all that almost ended it. The storm is over, the floodwaters have receded, the rescuers have guided you to safety, yet the terror, the loss, and the raw, unyielding weight of survival will remain, pressing into your bones, whispering in your ears, reminding you always of the night the land, the water, and the wind nearly claimed you. And as darkness settles fully over the Dutch countryside, you shiver, taste iron and mud one last time, and realize that the human body may endure storms, but the mind, the memory, and the soul carry them forever.